The moment you start to struggle with performing and pretending is the door to awakening your feminine energy. And this is exactly what I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm going to share with you 4 habits I naturally gave up in order to reconnect with my feminine energy. And when I say naturally, I don't mean easily. I mean, I came to the point where that felt like the right move. So without further ado, let's move to habit number 1. Giving up logic-based decisions over intuition-led. Before I explain this, I want you to imagine something. You are a goddess, you're a divine woman, and that is not a fiction, that is a fact. So the divine brought you here with a mission, a purpose. And your mission or your purpose is unique. Nobody else on the whole entire planet has a purpose or a mission like you do. But in order for the divine to talk to you, the divine had to create a specific channel, how it will transmute energy to you, how it will send you signs that will be unique to you. And that, my love, is your intuition. But as women in 21st century, we unfortunately don't get taught how to implement our intuition, how to work with our intuition. The way we're being raised is having to use our conscious mind, having to use logic, having to use facts that we can weigh down the pros and cons. But what we need to take into consideration is that facts and evidence can be very easily fabricated. And it all comes from the picture that it's been painted for us. Going back many years ago, when I was a child, I was taught when you make a decision, you always have to think what will be the outcome, to almost like predict the outcome. It has to be a successful outcome, it has to be an effective outcome, it has to be an efficient outcome. And for that reason, I had to use my conscious mind. But the conscious mind works based on the things that we see, we hear, we smell, everything that surrounds us. So whether you read something in the newspaper, whether you watch something on the television, it doesn't necessarily make it true, but it's the way the conscious mind works. It takes it in. And so living my life for many years that way, I was always having to have that internal battle with my inner voice. Even though the decisions I was taking in real life looked great on paper, they almost never felt great. I remember from my very early childhood, since I was 5 up until the age of 15, I was playing a piano because that was my mom's dream. My mom's a musician, well, ex-musician, so this was her vision for me to become a musician. And though I was good at it, I never resonated with being a musician. I was being taken to concert and settings of performance, and I was doing so great. I was trying to suppress my inner voice that was telling me, this is not for you, you don't want to do this. Eventually I spoke up, the piano story was gone. Then I moved to a French language school. I always hated French. It was something that I never resonated with, and although in year 1 I was absolutely amazing, I naturally started to deteriorate because, quite frankly, I was so disconnected from that language. It wasn't what I wanted to do. Fast forwarding to when I went to UK to study at university, I did law. I spent 2 years doing my bachelor's and a few more years doing my master's doing law. I hated law. And so all these decisions were taken based on logic, based on evidence, based on fact, based on what would look like the successful picture at the end. But what this cost me was having to constantly be in an internal battle with myself. If anybody asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I didn't have that answer. I didn't have that answer because I was busy having to cope between sticking to that logic-based decision that I had taken and listening to my intuition. It's like, which one do I go? It wasn't until a couple years ago when my dad passed away. And at the time I was working for a government agency in the UK, and I was chasing up the senior jobs. I was on the career ladder. There was a job that I really wanted, and I was applying for it again and again and again until I got invited to an interview. I passed the first stage with flying colors. I knew I was gonna get the job. And so I'm sat at home, my interview is in 15 minutes. I know I'm gonna get the job. And then it hits me, the sense of anxiety. And mind you, I'm not somebody that has always felt anxious. The moments that I came across with anxiety was the moments where I was giving up on myself, or the moments where I was cheating on myself. And so I picked up the phone and I rang the only person who wouldn't perceive me otherwise, and that was my brother. And I told him, my interview's in 15 minutes. I know I'm gonna get the job. It's something I've wanted for so many years now, but I don't want to do it. I feel like I am fulfilling somebody else's dreams, and that is all thanks to weighing pros and cons. He asked me, well, what do you feel then? Like, what do you want to do? Do what you feel is the right thing. And that coming from a guy felt like mind-blowing. And so I canceled the interview. That was the moment where I took one of the biggest intuition-led decisions, and it was getting away from something that I've been working for and working on and working towards for various many years, and tap into something that I truly wanted to do from within. And that was the moment when I took my feminine energy journey and my spiritual business seriously. And so if you're in that process, if you're in that stage where you always feel like you take the right decisions, but you never feel complete, you never feel satisfied, you never feel whole, could it be because you're not taking decisions led by your intuition, but by your logic? And if that's the case, that's an invitation for you to reflect a little bit. Moving on to habit number 2 that came naturally after I went through habit number 1. And that is, I stopped explaining my choices and decisions to others. And again, that was something I struggled with for many, many years, for the majority of my life. I always felt like if I wanted to do something that was not logic based, I had to receive people's approval. I had to explain myself, especially to my parents and my friends and the people around me. And the thing is that we're all different and we operate on different frequencies and we are all unique. And so when you're trying to explain yourself and you put so much effort and you put so much energy in explaining your choice, in explaining your decision, because you genuinely want people to understand it and support it, because there is a little bit of sense of scariness within you, that is actually draining your energy. And it wasn't an easy step. It didn't happen just like so, but it happened naturally, because when I quit my career, when I withdrew my application from that job and started to take a step back in my 9-to-5 career and in everything I was putting my energy, and I was taking my energy elsewhere into spirituality and into energies and all the esoterics, it's not that I received the backlash from people around me, but they didn't understand me. My mom didn't understand my decisions. My friends didn't understand my decisions. At the beginning, I started to explain myself because I wanted them to see that I was making the right thing. But it was costing me more energy than actually going for and creating what I wanted. And so if this is something that you resonate with, ask yourself, why is it that you want to explain yourself? Why is it that it's important for you to people around you to support you? And what will happen if they don't? If they don't support your decision, if they tell you that you're making a mistake, or if you're making the wrong move, is that strong enough to make you give up on what you want? If that is the case, then perhaps you need to face your own triggers. I'd like to think that everyone is you pushed out. And that means that people around you, especially people in your immediate environment, are mirroring aspects of you. And so when they disapprove, don't agree, or when they're trying to almost like take you away from where you're going into something else, that could be an invitation for more healing. And that is not only an invitation for healing, but that is also showing you where the healing has to happen, where you need to have more boundaries. Because quite frankly, when you feel certain in yourself, where you feel connected with your source, with your inner goddess, you don't need anybody's approval. Whether somebody agrees or not, it makes no difference to you, because you know you have a calling, and that is enough for you to continue moving forward. And that leads us to habit number 3, and that is silencing myself in order to avoid potential conflict. And I feel like this one naturally came in along with the first and the second habit. Again, it wasn't easy. It wasn't something that I overcame for overnight, but it's something that naturally comes in as you start to draw your boundaries, as you start to listen to your own voice and listen to your own intuition and really decide where you want to flow your energy. Again, for many years, I was keeping myself quiet because I didn't want to cause chaos. I didn't want to be perceived as the black sheep or the one that is always in opposition with what everybody else thinks. But again, that was causing an inner conflict. And I feel like most of the habits, if not all of the habits, actually, especially with the last one, the more we stick to them, the more we damage the connection with our feminine energy. Because our feminine energy is our voice to the divine, is our channel to the universe, is where we receive our inspiration and our creativity from. It's what makes us a muse to ourselves and those around us. And I feel like the more we keep ourselves quiet on the things that we disagree or the things that we don't want to accept, the more we're hurting ourselves. Your ability to speak is your ability to lead yourself. And so, if you decide to stay quiet just to avoid a potential conflict, you are, in other words, betraying yourself. And this has nothing to do with stating a fact or stating a point. It has to do with keeping yourself quiet and accepting behavior, situations, people, or whatever you could think of, accepting something that you're not in alignment with. And when I say silencing yourself, I mean you feel in certain way, but you're afraid to speak up. You want to express yourself in certain way, but you're afraid to speak up because you may trigger someone else or you may trigger something else, and you don't want to do that. But it's like I said, whenever having to perform in that way begins to become so difficult is when you know that your feminine energy, your inner goddess, is arising because she's here to lead, she's here to create, and she's here to express. And it's your responsibility to acknowledge, to honor, and to worship her in that way. I want you to think, where is it that you're still keeping yourself silent? And why is that? What is it that you are afraid that may happen if you were to voice out your truth? And isn't voicing out your truth actually what is going to guide you towards where you're meant to go? Because if you keep yourself silent, how are we releasing karma from our ancestors? From all these women back in our lineage, hundreds, thousands of years ago, that were kept silent. And that leads me to habit number 4, which is overextending myself in relationships. And that is something, again, that didn't come easy. Didn't happen overnight. It's something that I was working on along the other habits. And when I say relationships, I refer to any kind of relationship. So that could be family relationships, it could be friends, colleagues, love interest, it doesn't matter. Something that I struggled with was always feeling like I have to fill in any communication gaps. The people I would choose to be in a relationship with, again, friendship, love relationship, it doesn't matter, had something specific that I would see about them, like a potential I would see or a certain skill. And when a relationship would start to follow a structure of imbalance, I would almost like overextend myself. I would try and fill in the communication gap, or I would try to fix whatever the problem was, until later on I understood that not every relationship is meant to last. And the reason and the way how we figure that out is, does the relationship have a return of energetic investment? What does that mean? You and I have a relationship and I invest in you in certain way. Let's say I'm good at one thing, and whenever we're together, whenever we speak, I naturally tend to help you and I naturally tend to inspire you or give you direction or science or anything, right? But then you do something for me, not because you feel that you have to, not because there is any sort of entitlement, but because you naturally feel like you want to be sharing your energy in certain way with me. Like when there is an imbalance in the connection, one person, the one party begins to overflow the other person with energy, but there is no return of investment. And so this is how we end up feeling drained. And that is damaging your feminine energy, because the feminine energy is where the creativity, where the inspiration, where, it's where your muse like energy comes from. But that has to be nurtured back in some way. And if that is not happening, then the question here is, what role does this relationship still have for you? What role this person has in your life at this very moment when they're not investing back in yourself? And if you catch yourself putting energy in them, why is that? Where is it that you are trying to nurture them that you haven't nurtured yourself? What is it that this relationship, what is it that this person signify to you? And why is it important that you receive something back from them, that you continue to invest, thinking that the more you do, the more they'll bring back? That is something that you can reflect on, because these were the type of questions that helped me withdraw my energy. And it helped me understand that sometimes your lack of presence is what helps a connection revive. And sometimes your lack of presence is truly the end of the connection. And there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing bad in that, because not every relationship is meant to last. But relationships are like mirrors to us, because they reflect back at us certain aspects about us. And that is one of the most beautiful things about relationships, that when we look at the other party, when we look at the things that we love about them, or when we look at the things that we want to fix about them, we can see where is it that we stand, where is it that we need to nurture and we need to heal ourselves, and where is it that we need to give voice to ourselves. So let me know if that is something that you're currently working on, and what is it that you're doing to help you stop overextending your precious, beautiful energy to others. And so, what all these habits have in common is that when we let go of them, we come back closer to self. We remember the woman we are, because the feminine energy journey is not about becoming a different woman, it's about remembering your own gifts, remembering your own preciousness, remembering your own magic, and tapping into that energy, accepting yourself in your most authentic and raw version. And like I said, what they all have in common is when you recognize your values. What are your values in your life, for yourself, for your life, for other people, for the things that you want to do? When you understand that you hold no control over other people's reactions, and whether they approve or disapprove, it's got nothing to do with you, because you have your own path, and that is all that it matters. And that relationships are beautiful, but what helps us to define whether a relationship has a future is when we look into how seen and how recognized we feel in certain connection, because that mirrors a lot about us. And last but not least, it's all about releasing stuck energy. Anything that brings you a sense of anxiety is here to tell you that there is another path for you. And it's up to you to listen to your intuition and be led by her. I'd love to know, which of these habits are you currently working on? Or is that something that you've already released? And if so, how does that make you feel? Did you feel liberated? Did you feel free? Did you feel more creative? Let me know in the comments. And as always, I would love to see you in the next video.